welcome Exiles to my Herald of Purity Guardian. Now, recently I decided to let the Locus of Corruption Chamber choose my next build. I said, I'm going to corrupt a bunch of Atulas because I really like this new chess piece. I will build whatever I get in terms of whatever plus levels I hit. So the first time I hit a corruption that is double plus levels, I will make a build around it. I hit minion gems and +1 socketed, which means any minion skill goes. I ended up leaning on and deciding to do a Herald of Purity. As you can see here, I have it juiced up to level 33. And I was pretty excited about this for a few reasons. Number one, most of the gear is pretty freaking cheap. For example, this new Scepter Matatas, a +2 minion version of this is like 100C to 1 Divine, not very expensive for a +2 weapon. And since Herald of Purities are attack-based, then I can get a lot of base crit for them, and maybe I could lean more into that crit version of the Herald of Purity Guard. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And then on top of that, rings for Circle of Guilt with reservation efficiency and sentinel damage, which is really good if I'm specifically just building for Herald of Purity, which I am. They are cheap. These cost me, I think it was like 10C and 20C to get almost perfect rolls on these rings, which I was like, that's fantastic. A-okay there. And it works great with Atulas because Atulas is a chess piece that's like, hey, don't put life on your gear. And these rings, guess what? They don't have life. They have a lot of other nice stats between flat armor, all attributes, and then the reservation and the damage scaling, but they don't have any life. So it's pretty convenient there unless you get one with the Synthaplicit and life roll that would break. But otherwise, very cheap there. Another thing is, if you're going for a +2 minion helmet, it's actually pretty easy to craft one of these. Now, my helmet has T1 attributes. I actually am way over on my int. I don't even need that int. So this is really kind of like a 3-stat helmet, +2 minion dex, and then I have a hybrid res craft, so it's not great. But in terms of hitting +2 minion, it's actually pretty easy if you have a base that is not int at all, either strength dex, strength, or just dex. If you have one of those bases and you use, I believe it is dense, pristine, and metallic, you actually cancel out all the other prefixes except for rarity and plus minion gems. So realistically, this actually isn't even that hard of a craft because you can use pretty cheap, reasonable fossils and a 3-socket resonator, eliminate all the other possibilities, and essentially you're rolling for a 5-mod item, and then when you hit that 5-mod item, it's like a 1 in 11, I think, to hit the +2 minion because you have a 250 weighting versus a 25 weighting when it's rolling for that plus minion category, which actually makes the helmet craft not too bad at all to get a +2 minion. So I just bought the helmet with the basically enchant on it, and then I crafted it with that fossil combination until I hit +2 minions. I was like, that's pretty sweet there. Not only that, you have Dragon Fang, which is the amulet that says, hey, if you're playing anything that's not meta, you have a crazy strong amulet that is +3 on it, doesn't have life, pairs great with Atula. So basically, my mentality is I have all these really powerful items that just aren't that expensive. So I was pretty excited to put this character together. Along with that, I did a Guardian. The idea here was I was going to get essentially some pretty convenient regen, and this feels pretty good in my opinion. If you've ever played with Time of Need, I know the awkwardness of having an only proc every 4 seconds sounds bad, but honestly, this ends up saving you a lot more than you'd realize if you play with it. You'd start to get a feel of what I'm talking for. This has saved me multiple times, and I'm very glad I have it. And then on top of that, I have Bastion of Hope, so I get 25-25 block here, and I'm combining that with a Blue Nightmare, Red Nightmare combination. So I'm getting Fire Res here, Lightning Res here, and that's giving me a lot of base block. And that combined with having a shield and running Tempest Shield means if I have Spellcast and used Shield Charge recently, I actually have 70-70 block, 72-71. As you can see, it's the whatever that is. But you Shield Charge around, you're constantly casting this, you're doing Convocation, whatever it is, that will keep this stuff up and running. So that is the idea behind the defenses and whatnot of the character. We also have the 20% damage taken from the Radiant Crusade before we do. Eventually, if I was like super min-maxing this build, I would try to figure out the sockets to get precision on my life pool and then run determination so we could actually get a pretty solid armor number. But for the most part, I didn't really ever have any issues with dying up until I did Ubers, in which case I was dying to, essentially, if I didn't block a Shaper Ball with the 40 pen, those were enough to one-hit me if my Guardian dude was down, my 20% damage taking Guardian. Didn't happen a lot, but it did end up kind of screwing me on my Uber Shaper. For context, I, of course, tested this build against all the Ubers, and I did most of them deathless, and then I hard failed Uber Shaper and Uber Cirrus, both of which, this was right after the patch, and I was having some pretty bad visual bugs where I didn't even see the animation for the Uber Shaper Slam until it hit me. I went into the Cirrus arena, and literally nothing was animated, no ground effects, no degens. There was multiple times where I was having visual errors, which I think if I didn't have those, I probably would have succeeded the fight. But you know, I only do one take, I only do one try. I'm not gonna go try to retry it and rerun it, but it went 5 for 7 on Ubers for first try when I did the Ubers, this level 95 version I have here. Full context, Bob slash my anime guardian, he survived for the large portion of the fight up until Maven. He did die in Maven. He survived all the other Ubers, but Maven he died on. And I'm going to cut to me putting Bob back together so everybody knows what gear he has. All right, now that I got my anime guardian gear, we're going to revive him. He died in Maven. For the most part, anything under Ubers, he shouldn't be dying. You can do Ubers without him. But it's basically, I always like to do Uber tests for all my characters. So I took Bob in there and he made it through 5 of the fights, but Maven took him out. As for his gear, I try to keep it to just cheap stuff I thought was just generically nice. The main thing I wanted to do is have a guy giving me a haste aura from the new Guardian's Blessing support. If you have the alternate quality Divergent, you actually get 47 aura effects. So this attached to a haste makes this guy give us a lot more movement speed and a lot more attack speed, which helps out my my homies. The Herald of Purity Guardians have a lot more, Herald of Purity Sentinels have a lot more attack speed and whatnot. And then on top of that, he also lowers enemies' resistance to with Legacy of Fury. And then I was thinking that maybe with Gravevine, it would help the map clear out. We'll see what it looks like while we're clearing the map, see if you think it's helping or not. Potentially, you could go for like a +1 curse gloves with like a curse on hit and try to add in some additional curses via this guy. But I was mainly just thinking cheap dude who gives me an aura. I put on Ghastly Theater. I'm not sure this is even a great choice. I just chose it because it makes him immune to bleed. I feel like bleed can be dangerous for minions, so my idea here was just make him immune to bleed and then cap his res with Aura and Borax. I do not have a lot of minion res on the tree. For the most part, I'm resummoning my Herald of Purity dudes all the time when I just cast a ball lightning on enemies, so I'm not too worried about their survival. That being said, I do care about this guy's survival, and part of the way I'm giving him survivability is just chucking an Borax on him, so that way he has some res. So we'll go ahead and get this guy summoned up. I'm casting Animate Guardian, attaching all the gear to him. We're using a Magistrate Crown, the Mask of Stitch Demon. That's the most expensive item in this guy's gear here. Essentially what it's doing is giving him the ability to sustain the Guardian's Blessing. Guardian's Blessing is a lot of degen per second based on the Guardian's life and energy shield. And the idea is with Mask of the Stitch Demon and anointing this node right here, Grave Intentions, he gets a bunch of life as ES, which then the Mask of the Stitch Demon converts into a ton of regen. That's the idea behind Grave Intentions there. And that's the thought process we were going for. So we'll go ahead, and now that we have him set up, I have my haste aura right here on my side mouse button. And that means whenever he's on the field, his haste aura will be persisting throughout. It used to be that you had to have it on and turn it rebound on every single time you got through a zone, but they changed it so Guardian Blessing would now persist through zones. So you'll see we have the haste aura and I didn't have to reactivate it. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, I want to do a showcase for you guys, but I know you're thinking +3 minion chest. How the hell can I ever get that? I can't play the build without it. Well, I have a regular Atulus here with no plus levels on it, so I'm just going to demonstrate this just to give an idea of a more realistic, I guess, look on the build, because the main thing that's super expensive in this character is Atulas with the plus levels, and I just don't think that's necessary. The difference in the +3 and the non-+3 is the difference in a level 30 gem and a level 33 on Herald of Purity. If you know anything about gem level scaling, and this is the case pretty much across the board, I don't think there's too many exceptions that I know of. Level 30 or level 29 or 20 to 30, every level gets you about 10% more damage in most cases. And generally, once you go from 30 to 31 and onwards, you start cutting that level scaling at least in half. A lot of gem levels start only getting like 5% more damage. So a lot of times there's diminishing returns, and those additional levels on top past 30 just generally are not that strong in terms of your actual damage and improvement. That being said, it still obviously is 33 is better than 30, but I just want to showcase that it doesn't really prohibit this character from being solid in basically this showcase here. I just wanted to showcase it just for context, because I think this build's pretty inexpensive. That being said, if the Circle of Guilt get expensive, or well, if the Circle of Guilts get expensive, I don't see a lot of other gear pieces getting too expensive. Our shield is maybe a little bit pricey. Mainly for crafting this shield, you probably want to do a fracture of either +1 or minion damage, and then do something like Bound Fossils or some sort of Reforge crit to try to hit minion crit, and maybe you hit minion damage at the same time. Something like that is the idea for crafting a shield like this. And outside of all that, We are mainly going for grand spectrums for crit multi. I went for a minimum endurance grand spectrum. I don't think this is necessary for mitigation on the character. Ultimately, you probably could just go for another crit one and just have plenty of damage that way. So if you were going to try to make this a bit more budget, I would take this jewel out. I would get rid of the +3, and I would just get a bit more budget on the shield here. And I think the character would function quite well with those sort of switches. Our cluster jewels are not particularly expensive. Vicious Bite clusters, all you need to do is a Reforge crit. It guarantees a Vicious Bite. You can kind of fish around until you hit some okay notables to go with it. Feasting Fiends and Renewal are pretty solid. And then on top of that, the medium clusters, we're using Cult Leader and Disciples. Each of these clusters cost me 5 to 10 C. So unless the market gets overwhelmed with people wanting to try out Herald of Purity, I think they will be cheap for you as well. And then for jewels, you want to go for minion damage, minion attack speed, life are the best stats. I didn't get that on all the jewels. Some jewels I only have 2 of the stats. And then, of course, the red and blue nightmares I do recommend for that block as it smooths out the character's defenses. All right, that's a bit of a mouthful. Let's go ahead and get a map out here. Let's see. Have I done... we have a lot of openings, so we can do a decent amount of different things right now. Let's do I guess, Phoenix? Sure, let's do a Phoenix. Phoenix is fun. Quality this up, Alkit, and then we'll give you a little showcase of what this character looks like mapping. This is a gain life as extra, less armor, reduced chance to block. So this will hurt our defenses because we are a block character, and gain life as extra is a pretty tanky mod. +2 additional proj will make some of those Phoenix guys at the end a little bit more dangerous, but I think this should be fine for us doing this map. I'll go ahead and put on my Herald of Purity, guys, and we should be ready to go. There we go, Maven Witness, and you guys can get a good idea of what this looks like to play through. I will say, for Herald of Purity, if you're wondering how we're summoning them, we're doing them through faster casting, Ball Lightning, Unleash. The idea is Herald of Purity is summoned via hits on a character. Ball Lightning hits a lot, and then with Unleash, you cast a bunch all at the same time. And just so ever so often when I need to summon some more of my Herald of Purity guys, you'll see you want to have the number say 5 up here. You just need to do a Ball Lightning, and that will proc a bunch of them. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the map. I think one thing I forgot to cover too is Spectres. We are doing... I have a Master of Arena dude, Arena Champion, or whatever his name is, and then I have a Host Champion and a Carnal Chieftain, a Host Chieftain, Carnal Chieftain, basically the Frenzy and Power Charge monkeys. For the most part, these are fine up until you get into the harder content. Then they're a little bit squishy and those guys die. There's other great Spectres like Pale Seraphim and Bristle Matron and the Primal Crush Claw, stuff like that. I was just kind of too lazy to go get those Spectres. I didn't really care that much. The build was working fine as is. I didn't bother with it. Also, I have technically a Writhing Jar here to try to occasionally summon my Herald of Purity guys, but for the most part, the way we're going to have to summon them is going to be through hitting a rare, or I guess we already got some kills. Sometimes our Ball Lightning does do enough damage to kill because we do have the node spec to have minion damage apply to us. So my guess is maybe that's what happened there for summoning the guys. Now for us, basically going through the zone, we pretty much have to shield charge around and then convocate whenever we want our guys to pop up with us and help us kill the guys around us. You'll see the fire circles are from our Animate Guardian when the kills count is his for the boots, the Legacy of Fury boots to help with clear. And then the real, I guess, powerhouses in damage is our Sentinels of Purity. We don't have anything like the minion aggressive wand or whatever, but for the most part their targeting is pretty decent for just going around and trying to be fairly aggressive. I don't think their AI is too stupid in terms of like needing to attack enemies. They seem fairly aggressive, so I think it's fine. As for Valax, interesting. The Valax and I think Disfavor. As for the content I played this character with, I mostly did a decent amount of Sanctum with it. I didn't lose... I don't think I lost a single Sanctum with this character as I was playing it. I basically leveled this guy in Sanctum from 70 to 95. Initially started out with some level 70 Sanctums, then 75, then 80, and then I was just doing 83 for, I want to say, at least 10 Sanctums is probably how many I did. And then we have Arcanist Brand that has a, essentially, oh, what is it? A Assassin's Mark, Desecrate, and Spirit Offering. Spirit Offering gives a bunch of crit chance and crit multi. We have a large amount of base crit with this Matata's Teaching and with increased crit strikes on our support strikes here, and our supports here. So that helps basically help them get crit and crit multi, along with Assassin's Mark giving them some more base crit. And that's the idea behind the character is Some of the Sentinels of Purity, they go and hit things hard. Most of the gear is pretty cheap. As for if you're wondering why am I only 2 green sockets, 1 red, 1 blue on Triad Grip, ideally we are a Guardian, so we want them to be full cold conversion with the hatred, level 27 hatred we're getting from the from my little elemental relic guys. But because I am just too tight on gem sockets, the best I could do is 2 green and then a blue and then a red. That's the only way I could figure to fit these sockets that would make sense. It's a little bit of a damage loss, but on the upside, occasionally they will hit enemies hard enough to inflict a little bit of a shock, I would think. And so there's some advantage there. I think it works out pretty fine in my opinion. This is my Herald of Purity Guardian. I like playing this character a decent amount. I'm not a big minion guy, but this felt pretty chill. It was relaxing for Sanctum, and honestly, it was strong enough where I think in future leagues I am going to consider testing out a Guardian League start just to see if I can maybe have it. If Sanctum stays as good looted as it is here, I'd be tempted to try to plan a League start maybe even around this tile of character with the Giga Radiant Sentinel or Sentinel of Radiance in terms of like easy early game, just clearing through the campaign, cruising through, and then having a transition into a Herald of Purity to take on Sanctums. I think it could be pretty solid. So that's kind of where my brain is. I like this character a lot. I can recommend it pretty happily because I think it's pretty strong, especially for the gear level required to get this thing up and running. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out.